This is Diggin in the Tapes. In this episode, we had the good fortune to be in the presence of two of the greatest, Mike and Larry Alexander, the A brothers. Check it out. The best part of doing Matte Fabricators Society is being able to connect with the legends that came before us. Two of these legends are the Alexander brothers. And in 2006, thanks to John Schleicher and Bill Whetstone, the owner of the original Alexander brothers built Ford Starliner, the Adonis, liked what we were doing with MFS and connected us with the A brothers. So myself, Bob, and Johnny hit the road to Detroit.
When I was a little kid, I inherited all of these hot rod magazines, like 50s hot rod magazines, from my uncle. And I was just little. I was 10, 11 years old, and I didn't know that I didn't realize they were so old. I thought I was looking at pictures of hot rods, and we had the Roadster, so they all kind of reminded me of the Roadster in their weird way. One in particular was a lot like the Roadster, the way the back was molded, the sunken antenna, a lot of the things about it, they looked like old pictures of the Roadster, and I realized that my uncle was influenced by this car, the 69er that the Alexander brothers built, and started styling his Roadster after it. So my car is basically a backyard version of the 69er. Years later, I get the Roadster done. We take it to Detroit. Detroit was crazy because it was right after Matte Fabricators came out. All the people in the basement of Detroit, the rat rod area or the old school or whatever they called it, knew about Matte Fabricators. So we got there, we had my Roadster, and we had this reputation like we were gonna be crazy. Like, I remember getting called to the office and the guy was like, "Detroit is a civilized place. You're not gonna burn it down, are you?" And I'm like, "You don't have to worry about me burning it down. Like, just look outside. They're doing it themselves." Anyway, I love Detroit. One of the things that was so wild was meeting all these crazy customizers that's what they did. They went to Detroit. They were all there. And the highlight was probably meeting the Alexander brothers, Mike and Larry Alexander. They spent a lot of time with us. I think they realized that my car was kind of the crappy version of one of theirs. They got a kick out of it. So we spent a lot of time with them. They told us all these stories. And that's how interviewing them for the DVD came about. I'm glad that he was able to connect with the Alexander brothers because we went to their houses. And, at the time, they were like my grandparents' age, like it was like going and visiting your great uncle or your grandparents, like all their 50s stuff in their house. But they weren't like some show off big mansion, whatever, and these are guys that were designing cars for Detroit. It was very, very special to be able to spend that time with them in their own house and kind of get to know them. Kind of like all great partnerships, they had that thing where like Larry was like the wild one and Mike was like the organized one. And granted, I spent a few hours with them on a Saturday. I don't know them, but that's just my feeling. If there's a Paul McCartney and a John Lennon, Mike was Paul McCartney and Larry was John Lennon. They balanced each other out is my point. And speaking of balance, their cars had incredible balance. Looking at the pictures and seeing all the pictures that they did in bare metal and the quality of work was just amazing. It was just as good as it gets. But I don't know what Piero wants me to say about these guys except for I love them and I felt like they were immediate family in a way. Like they just looked at us like these little kids. Two cool parts about the trip. Coolest part for me personally is we went to Larry's first and we weren't there as long. And we walked through his house and it's just like you would never know it's a car guy's house. He had a bedroom that was like his spot. And he had all these car stuff and it wasn't like, it was stuff that he seemed to have collected recently, mostly I think. But what blew me away was there was a bleed sticker that I gave him at the Autorama that he had sitting on his desk. and he was displaying it like it belonged there with all this other cool stuff that he had. And maybe he was doing it because he knew we were coming, but I feel like he wasn't that guy. I feel like Mike's more the guy to take the picture out that you gave him to display it. And that is no slight on him. I just feel like Larry wouldn't have thought that way. Then we went over to Mike's house. He was so detailed in telling us all these stories about all these cars. And he was so detailed with all the stories to the point where in the middle of it, his wife was like, you guys need to take a break because Mike needs to eat. So she cooked us all dinner and we ate at his table, at his like dining room table. It was awesome. It was just an amazing time for those guys to still be, obviously older, but still with it enough where they remembered everything and they told all the stories, and they're so willing to have us in there. They still had fire. They still had the fire. For Piero to have captured that, and for me to be a part of it, was just, it's crazy when I think about it. And it's crazy how many of those guys he interviewed that are now gone. They're all gone pretty much. Anyway, it was a magical time. Alexander Brothers.
My name is Mike Alexander.
My name's Larry Alexander, Mike Alexander's brother, Alexander Brothers.
Old A Brothers. They used to nickname us Alexander Brothers Custom Shop, what we called our company, and started on a shoestring.
We started in business, our dad's garage, car and a half. We was doing body and paint work on the side.
When Larry got out of the service, he went to body and paint school, and I got out. My goal in life was to be a mechanic, because I used to love to tinker with engines. As you can see, this had a full race little four-banger in it with a Wyco mag, offy head, dual manifold, and an aluminum flywheel. And from 0 to 30, nothing could touch it. Larry convinced me, and I was kind of fascinated that maybe I should take a look at what body work was all about. I knew I better go to that. I went to mechanic school first. I'd probably never follow through and go to the body and paint school. Then I went to mechanic school. By the time I got out, Larry had a garage set up. So we were doing work at night, changing rocker panels. Then we started doing a few door handles and filling in holes.
Pretty soon we had so many guys, we figured going into business, that was the start of it.
Think about a $50 compressor that pumped more water and oil, I think, than air. We started this little shop and 2 cars in it, plus the back part of the building. We had a spray booth.
When we first started, dirt floors, just damping them down, and sometimes snow coming through the cracks in the garage,
We actually ended up painting a lot of cars right in the shop area at night. We learned a trick from Bill Hines, wet newspaper and lay it on the floor and wet it down, and it really holds down the dust, and we didn't run the fans. The only thing we had to watch out if it was snowing out, that no snow came through the cracks in the building, which happened to us a couple times. And
after a few years, the highway bought it out.
so we started looking for a little better building. We found one on Littlefield, 6 stalls in it. We used the end stall for a spray booth.
In the second shop, we rented a highway department, bought that one out. Then we got big time and we bought this one shop.
It was only 5 blocks from where my brother and I grew up. I had a friend in the Wayne County Road Commission that we checked with. There was no plans to do nothing to the highway there, so we bought the shop.
We had it on a spray booth. We were home clean till the state decided to build another expressway. So by then, we just figured God's trying to tell us something.
They decided 6 blocks up from us they were going to take everything there, including our shop. We stayed there another 2 or 3 years, and then we had to leave. We got tired of being knocked out by shops and by highways, and so we decided Larry didn't want to continue in the business, and he had a job to go to. I didn't, so I stayed there with Ken Yanis. We did a bunch of factory cars until the state came along and said they needed a shop. So that was the end of the A Brothers.
Mike and I, always on Northwestern Telegraph, we bought this Model A pickup, and we called it the Grasshopper.
Couldn't afford a lot of advertising, so we decided to use that as our advertisement. We'd use it for a shop truck, a little Grasshopper. Larry and I love clean, neat styling. A lot of people have told us they've seen it in our cars. Although we started with a 31 Model A, we didn't like the look of the front fenders, so we used the 29 fender, which hooked around the wheel real nice. We only chopped the top 2.5 inches because any more than that, it would have been out of place. We couldn't stand the grill, so we did a nice 32 grill for it. And we used a 32 bump. And then we welded the square frame for the license plate in the back and the Grasshopper in Detroit in the front. We made a one-piece hood for it, and we got the 37 Dodge truck headlight. And then we used a later model bed. It was probably a late 31 or 32 bed. We didn't want to narrow the fenders down because it would be out of proportion to the front. So we kicked out the running board, and we put the exhaust right behind that. The molding we used on there, 64 Bel Air, and that's the molding. We had to put some lead in and bend it. Little safety items, and back in those days, safety items in the trunk were always big issues. Spare gas, spare oil, spare water, and then of course the fire extinguisher, and a hardwood bed in the back. Finished like a boat. So it was a very clean looking little truck, and we used that for our advertising. Cy Gregory brought his 56 Victorian up to our shop, wanted ideas on customizing it.
I think we painted it about 4 different times, 3 or 4, and he'd have back end done and the front end. It was, and it made Carcraft magazine 10 best for the year. The West Coast started to notice it. It was the first big one we did.
The size car, we did the door handles and the side pipes and the headlight, tail lights first, put them in primer, and then he'd come back to do a little more. Then we did the front end, and Bill Hines sold us some white pearl and told us how to put the white pearl on, and we painted our first white pearl job on Cy's car, and it made a hit. Immediately made 10 best custom and Carcraft and a few other awards. And the last time we worked on the car, we changed the side chrome on it, painted the car wild cherry, a burgundy wild cherry. This was one of the cars that Snowflake flew in when we were painting the car. Luckily the lacquer had flashed off enough that we were able to just stop for a few minutes, tack it off, and then continue painting. The Silver Sapphire, or better known as the Little Deuce Coupe.
We did that for Clarence Vitello. It was a pretty ratty car when we started.
He brought a car into us that was basically channeled. It was a hot rod. It was at somebody else's shop. Clarence asked us to go look at it because he wanted to bring it up to us, and the guy had channeled it rather roughly. We told him, bring it over. We'll be glad to take a look at it. First thing we did on the car is we did a nice little rear end treatment in by putting 2 pans together, and then putting some little unique tail lights in there and a little grill in the back. We did the back end first, then he brought it in one day and he said, let's do the front, then let's fix those rusty doors. We convinced Clarence, fix them rusty doors, let's just shorten them, just like we did on Fargo's car.
Rather than restore it, put them pins on the side.
We just built a nice little ledge there and a recess panel, and we cut out some pieces of aluminum, 1/4-inch aluminum. That's how the Little Deuce Coupe got started. And then we also made the front end fold down. We had done this before Vargo's 69er. That was a fold down front end so you could service a radiator or whatever. Unfortunately, we tried to get him to let us chop it, but he wouldn't do that because he could barely fit in the car as it was.
He was going to go out to school on the West Coast. On the way there, he had a trailer displays on. It was enclosed, and he had displays on it. We wanted to chop it before it went. We didn't have the time. So when he got out, he met George at our shop here. He got to be friends with him and told him he's going to school out there. He says, you can store the thing in my showroom. On the way out there, the trailer went off the road, scratched it up. So George and they chopped it, repainted it. That's when George slapped the crest on it, you know. You don't really need to really have a reason to slap mine. He'll slap mine. They call him the Golden Greek, you know. He's a neat guy, but don't get a buck involved.
Clarence only liked one color because everything we did for him had to be cobalt blue. They talked him into a pearl paint, blue pearl and scallops, and the car just ended up really coming to life. Then George got a request. They needed a neat little deuce coupe for the Beach Boy album, and that's when the car really became famous. The fortunate part of the little deuce coupe being on the cover is they used the same picture that was used in Hot Rod magazine. The only thing they did, though, they cut off Clarence's head. Clarence would always say, "I lost fame and fortune by a head." Don Varga was a good friend of Clarence Catello. He loved what we had done to the little deuce coupe. He had a 34 convertible, so we came up with different ideas. Don liked them, so we went ahead and built the car. You can see, like the little deuce coupe, we built the nose. The doors were so badly rusted, we actually made the sides. These are scoops, these exhaust ports sit in, and it gives you a nice little ledge for getting in and out of the car. We chopped it, I think only about 1 inch in this one, because Don was a pretty tall guy. Ray did the interior in it. And the aerials, as you see in back, oblong opening, the antenna was on a 4-way switch that sat up there.
Aerial comes out of it, push it one way, the deck lid opens, push it the other way, comes down.
If you moved it to the right door would unlock, and pulled it to the left door would unlock. And then we did custom taillights. We made the framework out of conduit for them and a different type opening. And instead of using little pans like we did on the little deuce coupe, we made a nice opening and made some special taillights. It was another award-winning car. Every car that we did a full custom, either we named it or we'd get the owner to agree to a name. In this case, Don wanted to call it the 69er. Exactly why, I don't want to say.
69er? I don't know if Vargo will come up with that one. Maybe he's a coal miner, I don't know. Maybe it's something else.
Early 60s, Bill Whitstone brought his 60 Ford in, and he wanted us to make a unique car for him, and we ended up doing the car in 2 different ways. The first time we built the car, we just did a exotic front end and back end, filled the door handles in, special grille, headlights, tail lights. Of course, the interior was done, I think it was by Ray. The car immediately got a lot of attention by the magazines, and Carcraft magazine, I believe, for 10 Best. Then we did a second version of it, where we did a offset scoop on the right-hand side of it, being we radius the rear wheel housings, wrapped the fins down, and radius the back. Really came out to be a nice car.
And Bill sold it, and some fella come up to me and says, you know whatever happened to Adonis? And I says, no. He says, well, you better sit down. Some guy, he had a carport, and he bought it, needed to restore it, and his wife kept nagging him, either do it or get rid of it. And he come home from work one day, and the car's gone. She sent it to a junkyard. But the only trouble is, it was a junk out there that makes cubes out of it. I told this fellow that was telling me that, and it says, that's a good case for murder or divorce I ever seen, you know.
Guy up in Minnesota named John decided he wanted to build a clone and started calling Bill Whitstone. Got a hold of me because I had all the pictures of it, how-to articles we did on some of the work. We sent him a lot of pictures, and he was able to duplicate this. And got to tell you, for the 50th anniversary, the car was absolutely outstanding. Good as we done it, if not better. The car is exactly like you see it back then. Mike Budnick was just getting out of high school, brought his 60 Pontiac, brand new. I think it upset his father. He told us to go ahead and make it a wild custom, front end and back end. He built it in stages like normally did, but very close together. And
well, we did quad headlights, the front end.
Radiused all the corners and edges on it. Made a roll pan and a tube grill, different size tubing, a bigger one towards the bottom one. Filled in all the hood chrome, the door handles. We didn't chop it, although a slight chop would have been neat.
In the back end, looks like a turbine car or something. Put a grill work back there. Wrenched the taillights.
We did some unique taillights to it and balled off the two domes that came down the quarters in that year. And then we did two nice roll pans, upper and lower, and one of our aluminum grills. So the quarter panel wouldn't clash with the rear end cutting into that nice rounded surface. We actually built a little air scoop in the back. It came out real nice and clean, and we painted it a lime colored candy gold. It was a tint of green in it, and it had a super interior in it, and Mike showed the car all over and took many awards with it, and it got in all the right magazines, and the car just came out super.
It's up there with the best though.
This is a car we built for Bobby Masseron. As usual, though, we built it in stages. This was stage one, where we did a mild grill in the front, a little chrome treatment on the side, filled the door handles. We put antennas on it. We filled in the trunk and recessed the license plate in the back. And we built some real neat tail lights for it. Later, we did a second version of it that we went extremely wild on it. We built the total front end, very unique wraparound grill. Instead of the lake pipes that we got on here, we put a ledge down there, and the exhaust is behind the shadows there. And we did a completely different rear end. Bob eventually restored the car and shows the car today. This car, we were part of the Ford custom car caravan. Each customizer had to supply a rendering of a car they could build to Ford. So this was our proposal. We had a design done by Harry Bradley, but this car here did a couple things. It made Ford Motor Company realize that they could give a rendering to a customizer, and they could get exactly what was in the rendering. Plus, the advantage was they didn't have to do all the engineering drawings, because that's the way they used to do concept cars years ago. It opened a new door for us, because it also helped us get some factory concept work after that, as it did a few of the other customizers. The car was quite a success by the way we named it, the Alexa. That was Name the Contest, Name It. And they said they'd have this big Don Garlitz and a guy from AMT and some other people that would be all in on naming of it. Well, they also told us that we got to select the name, and we loved the Diora.
We kind of had off of Chrysler's. We were doing all the drag cars in that form, Ram Chargers, Color Me Gone, and they were backing guys from all over the country. Actually, that put Chrysler back in the used market. So we said, hey, we gotta get in this gravy train, you know? So we had Harry Bradley. He drew up the Diora.
We were looking for a project to do, and we knew the handwriting was on the wall, and with the state going to take our building, so we wanted to build something really neat and really show our capabilities. So we decided to build another truck. Like the first truck we built together as partners was the Grasshopper. We decided it would be a Chrysler product, because we had a good relationship with Chrysler. We'd probably con a vehicle out of them, which we did. It wasn't much. I'm surprised they left wheels on it. It was so bottom line car. We had our friend Harry Bradley designing a Dodge truck for us out of a little cab over engine, because we love pickup trucks. And Harry did an excellent design. He even gave us how-to cartoons. And as you can see, there wasn't much left of the original truck. It actually got cut away from here on back. But the door itself, the lower part was fabricated. The upper part was a back window off a Ford station wagon. Harry shows using the whole section, but in real life it couldn't happen that way. So we fabricated sides for it. We used to use a 1/4-inch rod stock, and we would, what we call, make a bird cage out of it to get the right shape and to really follow what the design intent was. And then we would rough it in with, we would take cardboard and tape it in there and again look at the shape. Like in this picture, when we were doing the front end, that's a cardboard piece to make sure we felt we had the right shape. This one here this is all cardboard from below this piece of sheet metal here, and all the shape pieces. Again, till we got the shape. There's the new sail panel we made because we couldn't use the Ford one. It just didn't work out, and Harry agreed. But we used the roof back to there, and we did, so it was quite helpful. We built the car, contrary to some of the stories they say about it, that Chrysler paid us. They didn't. They gave us a truck to build it, and they said they'd like to see it when it was done. How soon would we have it done? We said about a year.
So it took 2 years, and Chrysler wrote it off. So push comes to shove, we got it done and put it in Autorama.
Wednesday, we called up Chrysler and we said, we got the car done if they'd like to see it. And they weren't much interested, but they said they'd send out one of their underlings to look at it. And so the guy came out and was quite amazed by it, but he didn't really understand cars, but he must have really described it to the people at Chrysler, the amount of Chrysler people that came out that next day to look at the car before we brought it down to Cobo Hall. We took it to the Autorama and on a early Friday, and 9 awards, and one of them was the Riddler Award. We were quite proud. It won Best Engineering, Best Paint, Best Interior, People's Choice. Chrysler immediately contacted us after the show and said they'd like to shoot the car.
We got it done. Mike and Kenny, they spent 2 days down in the studio just shooting it up. God, it was in European books, and papers, and everything. Must have cost them a bundle just to shoot it up down in there,
After we finished it, we gave them, Mattel, the rights to do a Hot Wheel of it. Nobody knew what Hot Wheels was going to be because it was one of the first. It ended up being extremely successful.
Mike and I weren't too good of a businessman. Of course, we could have lost it. They could have flopped it. We'd be out. They paid us $300 for the rights. And now they're making all different versions of it. Keep on going. You never know,
I'd like to say Larry and I are honored to see a tape being done like this.
Well, you guys, thanks a lot for coming by.
In closing, I hope you enjoyed what you've seen, and
sayonara.
Thank you.
The A brothers were the greatest. I miss seeing them at car shows and chatting it up, but I'm glad I was able to capture this moment and so many others. If you dig this series and any others on the channel, make sure to like and subscribe and let us know what you think about Digging in the Tapes or your favorite previous Mad Fabricator societies in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you on the next episode.